we still got to give him a couple minutes. Eyes.
If everyone can start moving towards their seats, we'll begin momentarily.
Okay, we're going to start in about 3 minutes. Everybody, please take your seats. Hey! Absolutely, sit down. Generally, you're my guy, you're my tag, we'll sit there. Yeah, the DJ does. They have a late night. I'm not doing that. You guys, RGA?
Yeah, we have dinner. I'm not doing dinner. There's something else. I'm not going to that. I got my daughter in town. So
What are you going to do?
We're going to, it's her turn to go to the White House.
I'm taking my daughter, too.
Yeah, she's pumped. I'm pumped. Jewel.
No, it'll be fun.
Yeah, these things are grueling. It's grueling for you. Yours got so much energy.
Yeah, no, it is a lot of work, though. I agree.
So were you going to any foreign trips coming up? Oh,
Mexico in 2 weeks, I think.
I do. I'm interested. I just, if we have enough advance notice for an a Middle East trip for the military.
Good.
So I told them to tell your staff.
Good. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
They're fun. I love them.
I wonder if I could just interrupt the secretary. Oh, it's good to see you. Glad to be here.
Okay, let's get the music. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to our cybersecurity summit that we're having. My initiative as chair, Meet the Threat, to deal with the serious cybersecurity issues that we have. I am very excited to host this. I'm always excited, but I'm really excited to, really excited today to host this conversation and highlight all the great work that the NGA has been doing. But before I do that, I do want to mention a resolution that we have that we talked about at lunch today with all the governors. We have a resolution in honoring the memory of Justin Stevens. Justin Stevens, as you know, served the National Governors Association as the legislative director for the NGA's Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee. He worked very closely with me as well as Governor Hutchinson here. Justin was also the point person for us on the Council of Governors. Those are the 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans appointed by the president to work with our intelligence and defense agency. And Justin did an absolutely magnificent job. Even during his very difficult times with his illness, he remained always positive and continued to respond to the needs of all of the governors. Justin was a national voice and expert for our governors on issues ranging from cybersecurity to veterans to disaster relief. We cannot thank Justin and his family enough for allowing us to be a small part of his life. He was an incredibly young man, and the contributions that he made will never be forgotten by the folks at the NGA. We express our sincere condolences to Justin Stevens' family, and we honor his memory. At this point, I would ask if we could have a moment of silence for Justin. Thank you. As you know, this past July, I kicked off my initiative, Meet the Threat. States confront the cybersecurity challenge to provide states the resources that they need to enhance cybersecurity. For far too long, cybersecurity has been an information technology issue that required technical solutions. Through our new initiative, I have and will continue to highlight that cybersecurity is critical to each and every governor. As you know, the governors of our nation actually have more data than actually the federal government. When you think of all the data that we have through our state tax returns, through the Medicaid and healthcare programs that we provide, Department of Motor Vehicles, we have a wealth of information that every single day people are trying to get in and get our information through cyber threats and cyber criminals. In the Commonwealth of Virginia alone last year, we had 86 million cyber attacks in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Just recently, a foreign actor attempted to get my personal email from my state account. This goes on each and every day. As a state with 27 military installations, the largest naval base in the world, the Pentagon, the CIA, we have a responsibility when we have all those assets to make sure that we are leaning in, to provide that front line of defense, to not allow anyone to get into our system and take our valuable data. As I said in July, if Virginia is in great shape and does a great shape with cybersecurity, it is absolutely meaningless if some other state doesn't do anything about cybersecurity. We have the same healthcare provider. They will use that smaller state and go through that healthcare provider to get a back door into the Commonwealth of Virginia. So our initiative, and Governor Snyder and I have worked very hard on it, that initiative is to make sure that all 50 states meet the basic protocols to make sure we have the basic levels of support so that we are all protecting one another and protecting one another's data. It is critical to protect our critical infrastructure, our electrical grids, our water system. They're trying to attack our 9/11 dispatch centers, all constantly being targeted. Also, for our businesses, it's important that we send a message to companies as we recruit them to our states that they know we at the state level are doing everything we can to help provide the protections for their own data. In addition, as I've talked about a lot, this is a tremendous source of economic opportunity. The jobs of the 21st century Number one is going to be cybersecurity. In the Commonwealth of Virginia today, we have 582 cyber companies. Right now today in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I have 36,000 cyber jobs open. So I would say to all the young parents who are here with us today, you're all too young. There used to be a movie called The Graduate. And the key phrase, Governor Dayton, was what? Plastics. I would say, see, you're too young. But cyber is the key. And as I say, for parents, the starting pay in Virginia is $88,000 for these 36,000 jobs. As the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, I'm forfeiting $3.5 billion of payroll wages, about $125 million of state tax wages. So that's why we have transformed our education system to do what we have needed to do. But these jobs are not going away, and they're going to continue to grow. So what we have done at the NGA, and I want to thank Tim and Jeff, where are they, who have done a magnificent job. Are they with us here today? Stand up. Here are the guys who run our cyber center at the NGA. They are the governor's cyber warriors, and they and their team have done a great job to make sure that we are protecting all of the assets. Since the launch of our initiative in Iowa, the NGA has held several events around the country and provided valuable resources to our fellow governors. A week after the summer meeting, we have now held roundtables throughout the United States of America on healthcare issues, on what they need to do in healthcare, workforce development, and infrastructure. We have brought in cyber experts, businesses both large and small. These discussions have culminated into memos that discuss the recommendations that each one of you and the other state policymakers can implement to assist you in your states. In October, we held our first regional summit in Boston. It was sold out within 4 hours. We had 26 states come. Every state was allowed to bring 4 people. It was a great, great working session. We will now have our next one, the final one, for the other remaining 24 states that will be coming up in California in March. So we now have the Cyber Center set up. We had asked that all the governors continue to work with it. We have, in front of every governor, will be given a card. You will see that card. Nobody else has seen your card. That is for you. That is, we've gone through your state, and you have different color codes to determine how your state is doing on cybersecurity. I will tell you, even as chair, I have not shown your card. Governor Hickenlooper is showing his card to Governor Raimondo over there. I see that. That is your choice if Colorado wants to share with Rhode Island. Governor Dugard is not. He's putting it in his pocket. He's not going to let anyone see. They're going to keep it. But it's important that you look at this checklist, because when we went out in July, we said, let us all meet the basic protocols and put our checklist together. You see they are actually color-coded. I'm very proud. I will show my card up. You have obviously red, yellow, and green. Not to brag, but the Commonwealth of Virginia, all green, Governor Hutchinson. I just want you to know that. Yours might be too, but it is what it is. But honestly, these metrics are for you to use. If you have red and yellow, you need to do something about it. If you have red, you really need to get in the game and do it. And that's what our cyber team is here to work with you on as we continue to do it. By the time we finish up next July, we need to make sure that everybody has those basic protocols, and we have filled out and done the checklist that we have needed to take it to the next level. You see in front of you a slide. As you can see from the results, states are doing very well in some areas and not so well in others. The good news is that the states are placing a tremendous emphasis on establishing the governing bodies to identify and implement cybersecurity policies, mandating cybersecurity training for state employees, and have established a solid foundation for cybercrime investigations. On slide 2, on the other hand, there are some areas that states can improve on. Governors need to ensure that their critical infrastructure's vulnerabilities are assessed and identified and put the appropriate priorities on it. You need to make sure that you are receiving timely and useful information on a consistent basis to make informed policy decisions, and to assure yourself that your state is doing the basics that are needed to align your state with the NIST cybersecurity framework. And lastly, it is imperative that you have a strategic plan that outlines your state's vision for the next 3 to 5 years and a response plan that is based on your own individual risk assessments. Implementing these 4 basic practices will help guide you on the path to securing your state from malicious cyber actors, and NGA stands ready to assist you with your needs. Now, I would like to turn it over to the great governor of the great state of Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson, who is chair of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee, the greatest chair ever of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Commission. He succeeded me, so that is a great compliment. But thank you, Governor Hutchinson, for your tremendous leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Governor McAuliffe. Great leadership on your part, and he advised me, since he had a perfect score, that he will be grading on the curve all the states, and that is good news for us. But really a perfect example of leadership in a critical area that we all face. And I just wanted to emphasize a couple of points based upon my experience as a governor, but also going back to my time frame as Undersecretary at Homeland Security when we looked at threats from a variety of arena. And just in the last 2 weeks, obviously we have the tens of thousands of attacks that commonly come with the state databases, but we had a specific denial of service attack that was effective in terms of shutting down our state website for a period of time. That happened within the last 2 weeks. It was quickly up. There was not any damage done or not any loss of data. But then we had a small agency of state government that did have a loss of data based upon an attack. The good news is there was not any personal identifiable information for any citizens on there, so it was not a loss that cost. But that leads me to the concern that we should have in terms of governors. One is the potential loss and costs to the state. If you're in the private sector, you talk about in terms of liability. But the data notification requirements for loss of citizens' data does apply to the states in most jurisdictions, and it would to us, and it would be a significant cost if we had a loss of consumer information based upon a cyber attack. And so we have to concentrate on that side of it. In Arkansas, we have done our cybersecurity risk assessment that was just conducted by an outside group that made recommendations. We're going through an effort in data center consolidation, enterprise architecture that we unify under one agency, our Department of Information Services, setting up a cybersecurity office. And so we're making these steps. But I just, and I see some of my good friends with the Southern States Energy Board and the Interstate Commerce, the Oil and Gas Compact Commission, that we met with an energy summit, and one of the points of conversation was the protection of our energy grid. And all of that is based upon the private sector and their protection of their networks from cyber attacks. But there is significant worry on a governor's part if the energy grid goes down, because that impacts our response, our cost to the state. And so there is a regulatory challenge to us to make sure that our private sector that is regulated, that they are investing as they need in cybersecurity and protection as well. So I just raised that as an interesting point because of the liability and risk potential to the state, not just for our own systems, but also the private sector. And it should be a non-regulatory environment. We should certainly encourage them to protect their own data as they are motivated to do. I just want to make those introductory comments. I'm delighted to hear from the panelists, but before we go that direction, I wanted to recognize the Vice Chair of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee, Governor Brown, who is doing an outstanding job in partnership with us. Governor Brown.
Thank you very much, Governor Hutchinson, and it's truly an honor and delight to work with you. And Governor McAuliffe, thank you for your extraordinary leadership on these issues. I was Secretary of State before becoming governor, and while I was Secretary of State, I received the news, unfortunately, that our state campaign finance and our business registry websites had been hacked. And, oh, thank you. My mother always tells me they can hear me anyway without the microphone. So, but the state campaign finance and the business registry sites were hacked while I was Secretary of State. The websites were fairly new at the time, and they were developed to make reporting easier and accessing services for small businesses much more accessible. We were able to react immediately, shut the websites down, and began a full investigation with law enforcement. In the end, we were able to rebuild our programs. We built stronger walls and made the system stronger, but not without a lot of expense to taxpayers and a lot of time and energy from state employees. Since that cyber attack in 2014, my state has taken a number of steps to address system deficiencies and increase our IT security posture. I initiated an audit that uncovered numerous structural security gaps, and then as governor, I issued an executive order to unify responsibility and upgrade Oregon's capabilities. And this legislative session, which we're currently in, I'm supporting legislation to establish a cybersecurity center of excellence. It will develop a statewide cybersecurity strategy, share information between the public and the private sectors, coordinate incident response, identify best practices, and encourage development of the cybersecurity workforce. And Governor McAuliffe, we're really excited about getting some of those good paying jobs that you got in Virginia to Oregon as well. And I think we can do this by bringing together companies in Oregon like Intel and Hewlett-Packard, working with state and federal agencies, and of course one of our local universities, Oregon State University, to do more than just upgrade our state systems. I believe that we have to build tools that the public can put their confidence in, even when doing something as simple as buying a fishing license, and we like to buy fishing licenses in Oregon. We've also been really fortunate to be one of the 5 states selected to participate in the NGA Policy Academy on enhancing state cybersecurity. The Academy has been a great benefit to my team on the ground, and I certainly look forward to sharing lessons learned with my colleagues and the states. So thanks so much for the opportunity to participate. I look forward to hearing the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Governor. And to help kick things off today, we've assembled quite a panel. We're honored to be joined by John Carlin, who is the former Assistant Attorney General for the United States for National Security at the United States Department of Justice. John will be providing us an overview of the national security context around cybersecurity. John, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Governor. So I thought I'd start with, imagine this. You get home from this conference and you're briefed that somewhere in your state there's been a breach. And it looks unsophisticated. It came in through using an unsophisticated tool, and it looks like a low-level hacker. And your IT folks say, this is no big deal. It was a relatively obscure part of our system, and all they stole was around 500 names and addresses, personally identifiable information. Small loss. And they say, we got it. Don't worry, the system's back. So it's one of, 1,000 things that you're briefed on the day. Actually, probably wouldn't even reach you as governor. It would be someone else in your state getting this news. Several weeks later, they go back to that someone 5 rungs down from you somewhere in your state, and they say, you know what, we got a request through Gmail, and a request from this guy says they're going to release the fact that they took this information to embarrass us, and they want us to pay them $500. This is a form of sometimes called ransomware when it actually encrypts your system, but it's a form of ransom that takes place with cyber attacks. And they say, you know, I don't think this guy can really do anything. It's not that serious. It's a relatively small amount. I'm not even going to brief this up. We got it. We're going to handle it. Or they say we're going to pay them $500. Well, this was a real case that happened to a trusted retail company with a trusted brand. And in that case, what they did was work with the federal government. And what they found out was it wasn't what it looked like. Yes, it was a low-level crook who did want to make $500 through Bitcoin. But that crook was an extremist from Kosovo who had moved from Kosovo to Malaysia. From Malaysia was in a co-conspiracy with other people outside of the United States to hack into this company. And on the back end, this extremist was in touch with one of the most notorious cyber terrorists in the world at the time. A man named Junaid Hussain, a British citizen who had moved from London to Raqqa, Syria, where he was located in the heart of the Islamic State of the Levant. And what he was doing with those stolen names and addresses wasn't to make a buck. What he was doing was culling through them to see, hey, do any of these people look like they work in government? Do they have a .mil address? And if they do, I'm going to put them on a list, a kill list, and then using this new method of crowdsourcing terrorism that we've seen the Islamic State in the Levant adopt, that resulted in us bringing more terrorism cases when I was head of the division than we've ever brought before in our history, by using our social media to propagandize and recruit young people. They took that kill list based off this US company's information and pushed it back to the United States through Twitter that said, kill these people by name where they live. That's the current state of this cyber threat. It was the first case we brought that involved bringing charges of both terrorism and criminal charges. Take effective action, but it wasn't easy. And the reason we were able to take effective action was because the victim in that case worked quickly and efficiently to share the information. So what type of action was taken? Well, first, that individual, and his name is Farizi, in Malaysia, was arrested pursuant to US charges, and thanks to cooperation from the Malaysians that had been obtained through the State Department, he was arrested on those charges and brought to Virginia. This just goes to show the Russians can reach us even here. We'll get to that thread. So he was arrested, convicted, and pled guilty and is serving 20 years. And Junaid Hussain, who was in ungoverned space in Syria that was outside the reach of law enforcement, was killed in a publicly acknowledged military strike by Central Command. But think about that threat. It's crossing 5 different countries. It's reaching into the states where you have the responsibility, even though much of it's occurring outside of your borders. And at the end of the day, as you know far better than I, the person responsible if something goes wrong will be you. No matter who else was involved in that occurring, no matter where else in the world that it came from, if it's your state and your system, they're going to say the governor was responsible. And the fact is, the one thing we all agree on, and you're here across the panel today, and I'll go through a couple cases that'll show you why, is we're not where we need to be. There is no internet-connected system. There is no internet-connected system that is safe from a dedicated nation-state adversary or even a sophisticated criminal group if they're determined to get in right now. That's the persistent threat. And there's no technology that builds that wall that's high enough or deep enough to keep them out. What have we seen? You've seen in the federal government a change in approach. When I was prosecuting these cases criminally, there was a squad I worked with on the criminal side, and we were plenty busy, but there was another squad at the FBI who worked on the intelligence side. And the whole time I was working those cases, they were behind a secure door. I never went on to the other side of that door, and it's not like I was banging to get in, because again, there was plenty to do. When I went over to the FBI to serve as chief of staff to Director Mueller, that door opened. And we were focused on the cyber threat. And we developed a new capacity to share intelligence, just as like we had post 9/11 when it came to the terrorism threat, to share intelligence very well within the federal government, from NSA and CIA, Secret Service, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, including information coming from your states. And what you could see, there was a Jumbotron screen larger than the screens behind me, and we could watch in real time. And what we were watching, it was an incredible intelligence feat to be able to watch it, but what we were watching were nation-state adversaries hopping into things like state universities, then hopping into a company, and then we were watching day in and day out billions of dollars worth of trade secrets and intellectual property and business negotiation strategies exfiltrate out, flow out of the United States to the benefit of foreign countries. And it became clear that our approach of treating this like a secret intelligence problem wasn't working, and that we had to make public what we were seeing and start to disrupt it. because it was causing real harm, real loss to real victims now. And that was a change of approach. This is an area that involves sensitive sources and methods, and all through the Cold War, the usual approach when you had a spy was not to talk about it, but to try to follow what they were doing. But this was on a scale we simply hadn't seen before. It's that change in approach that's led in every one of your states now. In the U.S. Attorney's offices, there are specially trained national security cyber prosecutors or units who are getting access for the first time to what had formerly only been on the secret side of the house. They're called the National Security Cyber Specialists, and they're folks that should be integrated in sharing that information as appropriate with your National Guard, with state authorities. That change in approach led to the first indictment of its kind, the indictment of 5 members of the People's Liberation Army, Unit 61398. And what they were doing was they weren't stealing state secrets. They were stealing things like a company would be about to do a joint venture with a Chinese company. Right before they were going to lease a lead pipe, you'd watch the members of the People's Liberation Army, uniformed members of the second largest military of the world, go into those US-based companies and steal the technical design specifications for the pipe. Or to use another example, solar company, they went in, stole the pricing information, they then price dumped their product to force the solar company out of business, and when the solar company had the audacity to sue, to add insult to injury, they went in and stole the litigation strategy. So people ask, well, why did you bring this case in the criminal system? And that's why, it's theft. And what we showed, there's an attachment in that case, is that that activity started at 9 a.m. Beijing time. It went from 9 to noon. It decreased a little bit from noon to 1, and then it went up again from 1 to 6. So unfortunately, I guess fortunately, unlike many of you that didn't do the working lunch, otherwise the loss would have been greater, but they were working 8-hour days, getting up in the morning, putting on their uniform, going in as military officers and stealing from US companies. So the idea of this is, if we're gonna change the behavior, the norms in this space, we gotta start bringing deterrence. And it's just like if you let someone walk across your lawn long enough under US common law, and it's also true in British common law, they get what's called an easement, the right to walk across your lawn. That's why we all put up no trespassing signs. This, in a way, was a giant no trespassing sign, get off our lawn, and international law works a lot like US common law. It's the law of customary law, and this was the beginning of saying this is not acceptable. So fast forward a little bit to the North Korean attacks on Sony. And many, including some in this room, we war-gamed for years. What's it gonna look like if a rogue nuclear-armed nation decides to attack the United States through cyber means? And not once did we get it right, because we never predicted that it would be over a movie about a bunch of pot smokers. And I don't know how many of you have seen that movie, but those in the national security community had to see it over Christmas, for which I blame North Korea, although they had every right to make the movie. But it's because that was the triggering event. We took it seriously as a national security event because it was attacking our values and the right to speak freely. We couldn't have responded to it, same theme, without the immediate cooperation of the victim who passed information quickly and had the infrastructure in place to do it. That's what allowed the naming of North Korea in 28 days. And as governors, I think you'd have the same concern that that company did, which is, until we named North Korea, all of the media reporting was about what did Sony do wrong. It was all blame the victim reporting. As soon as we were able to say who did it, the narrative changed, and rightly so, and said, hey, you in federal government, what are you doing to protect us against North Korea attacking one of our companies? And that changed the conversation. I know that was helpful for the business Sony. It'll be helpful for businesses in your state and to you. From there, you saw us put an executive order on the books that now allows the sanctioning of those who commit bad action against your state through cyber means. We had that with terrorists and those who proliferate weapons of mass destruction, but we didn't used to have that tool available. In some ways, we were lucky it was North Korea. They had done so many other bad things that we had an available legal tool to use against them to sanction them. But until April that year, we didn't have one generally when it came to cyber actors. Since then, you've seen us apply the same type of new approach of figure out who did it, make it public, and then impose a consequence against the Iranian-affiliated actors who attacked our whole financial system, 46 different financial institutions, including most of your states, affecting hundreds of thousands of customers and costing tens of millions of dollars. And we made public in that case as well that they also hacked into the critical infrastructure of the Bowman Dam in Rye, New York. And what they had been able to do was they got into the control systems of the dam, and they were able to lift up the sluice control systems so they could have caused flooding if they so desired. Now, as it turns out, that dam was down for maintenance at the time, so it wouldn't have worked as intended. But I hope you're not going to let your bridges and dams crumble as your cyber defense, that our cyber defense should be keeping them out in the first place. So that there were 4 main actors that had been talked about as national security threats outside of the terrorist groups, who all have the intent to be able to cause cyber harm. You saw Zawahiri back in 2012 declare on behalf of al-Qaeda, he called on jihadists across the world, cause as much damage, including financial damage, as you can against Western institutions in the name of terror. They have the intent but not the capability. The 4 major players with named capability were Iran, North Korea, and China. And you'd seen us take public action against all 3 heading into the summer before this election. You have now seen us take action against all 4 in terms of the Russian attempts to undermine confidence in the integrity of our electoral system. What you've seen, though, in many of these instances is that the harm wasn't necessarily directly against the critical infrastructure. It wasn't necessarily the most sophisticated attack. What does everyone remember about Sony? What they remember are the stolen emails and the embarrassment that it caused to the company. What do people remember in terms of undermining the confidence in the integrity of the election? Again, it was stolen emails from a server not connected directly necessarily to one of the campaigns, along with other activity. These are vulnerable spots that will be there somewhere in your state system. And as we get more sophisticated and as you're thinking about resilience plans, we need to start assuming that they can get in because they can. You're not going to be sold a product that keeps them out. And then figuring out in terms of your corporate governance, if they get in, what are they going to do that will cause the most harm? What do we value most? And how quickly could we get back up and running to deliver to the citizens of your states what matters to them most? That's true when it comes to states, it's true when it's come to federal government breach, and it's very true when it comes to the private sector. And what we found is that we're just at the beginning of this conversation where people are really treating it like the risk that it is. If you think about it, and I'll stop here, but over a relatively short period, from 20 to 25 years, we put everything that we value and moved it from analog space to digital space and connected it through the internet. And we did so systematically across the board, making those decisions without adequately thinking through what the risks were. And so now as a country, and really much of the world is playing catch up, knowing that the ability to cause harm way outweighs our ability to protect ourselves. And we're at a critical moment right now because we're in the midst of another transformation. That was data. The next transformation is the Internet of Things, and it's already begun. So whether it's pacemakers in our hearts that are internet connected, were first rolled out without encryption, so a 12-year-old could hack and kill, to drones in the skies, again, were originally rolled out. And it's not because there were bad people designing them, it's because they were designing them to see whether they worked, but they weren't focusing on would they work if a bad person tried to take advantage of vulnerabilities. And lastly, we've already seen the recall of 1.4 million cars from the road because it was shown that you could hack into them and turn off the steering system because you could get in through an internet-connected entertainment system. By 2020, I'm not talking about self-driving cars, and that's on the horizon as well, but by 2020, 70% of cars on the road are going to be internet-connected vehicles, essentially computers on wheels. So whether it's the pacemakers in our hearts, the drones in the skies, or the cars on the street, we're in the midst of a massive transformation, much of which will be good, towards the Internet of Things, but we can't make the same mistake again of not building in security by design on the front end.
Wow, let's hear it for John. Thank you, John. I thought I was excited about cybersecurity. Glad we got you on our side, John. Let me now turn it over to Adam Clayton Powell III to kick things off and introduce our panelists that we have with us today. Adam is with the University of Southern California, and he heads up their Communications Leadership Policy Institute, and in that capacity, Adam directs the Center's Internet of Things Emergency Response Initiative.
Thank you, Governor, and governors, ladies and gentlemen. We have two distinguished panelists this afternoon. Governors, you have their full bios in front of you. Mary Galligan is Managing Director of Deloitte and Touche, specializing in crisis management. Before joining Deloitte, she spent 25 years with the FBI, where she was Special Agent in charge of cyber and special operations for the New York office. We also have Vinton Cerf, highly respected engineer who really did invent the internet. Now he's at Google, where he has a unique title in corporate America. He is the Vice President and Chief Internet Evangelist, and he'll tell us what that means. So first, Mary.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you very much, Governors, to have me here today. It's a privilege to be with such an honored group. I worked with John in the FBI, and yes, he is that passionate about cybersecurity and everything else that he does. Vinton and I talked briefly before the panel, and we decided what I would do is I would set up where we are right now in the states, what the governor's challenges are, and Vint would talk about solutions. If there's one thing I've learned in working in cyber, if the father of the internet suggests that, you say, yes, sir, that sounds like a great idea. So where are we right now? When we look at governors, and as John just talked about, the threats that we're facing, they seem insurmountable, but we have to break them down, and how can we deal with the technology that we have that connects us, that our constituencies want from us in order to access our information as fast as possible, to get our fishing licenses as fast as possible, our driver's licenses, whatever it may be, at the same time balancing the risks that come with that. So as governors, you face a very unique challenge. John alluded to it, as did the governors, in that you not only have to worry about protecting information technology, data, you also have to worry about protecting operational technology, OT. That's the controls that run our critical infrastructure. So you have a bigger challenge than some CEOs of the largest corporations in the world do, that may only have to protect, and I put only in quotes, the information technology. So you have both of those challenges as you're dealing with the cyber risk within your states. So one of the things that we did is Deloitte, along with the National Association of States CIOs, did a survey, and 49 of the states and territories CISOs responded to the survey. So where are we right now? Well, the first thing is, as Governor Hutchinson said, the very good news is that across the states, governance in cybersecurity is in place. It is part of the fabric of states. It is discussed frequently at all states. 1/3 of you are getting monthly cyber briefings from your CISOs or CIOs. And that is a very, very important statistic to look at, because as we increase those communications between our CISOs and our CIOs and our governors and the executive committees, we can start to come up with what are the risks and how do I prioritize them, because I can't deal with all of them at the same time. The second thing that we see right now is there is a confidence gap between the governors and the CISOs. And what do I mean by that? So what the survey found is that 66% of the governors, elected officials, and appointed officials feel confident that their state is poised to deal with external threats. Only 22% of your CISOs believe that. Now, the important thing about that is we've also seen in those states where the governors have made cyber risk a strategy, they are involved in reviewing the progress towards that strategy, that communication gap, that confidence gap closes. So it's something to take away with when you're talking about cyber risk in your state. What's that conversation that you have with the CISO or the appropriately titled person in your state? How frequently are you looking at the reviewing of that strategy and those kinds of briefings that you're getting? Right now also, when we look at it, the conversation is about what is coming next. And what I'm going to set up is 2 key points, and Vint is going to continue to talk about those. The 2 things that we see that are extremely important to you as governors of our 50 states and territories is resiliency and access management. So what do we mean by that? John gave us a couple examples of resiliency, but you are going to hear more and more conversations about resiliency in the next few years around the cyber risk. And the good thing about this topic is states are already used to being resilient. So resiliency is how quickly can I identify the problem? How quickly can I mitigate it, and how quickly can I recover? So if you think about that from your position as a governor, you do that. You do that with natural disasters, you do that with terrorist attacks, you do that with a train derailment. You are used to responding. You have tools and skill sets within your state government that do this on a daily basis. The same thing with cyber. Whether it's the private sector, the state, or federal, as John mentioned before, those that can identify the problem as quick as possible, can mitigate it and recover from it, will do better in the marketplace if you're a private sector, or will do better with our constituency if we're in the state government. Very, very important, as Governor Hutchinson said in the beginning when he showed that first slide, is what is our response plan? Have we practiced that response plan? And I will tell you what you're going to hear. You're going to hear, yep, we've got a response plan in state, whatever. Oh yeah, we've practiced it. Where it's been practiced is on the technical side of the house. The technical folks have practiced that. Cyber risk is a business risk. So you need to do those simulations, or from my days in the FBI, we would call it wargaming, working with our military brothers and sisters, of simulating who is going to respond. What are the roles and responsibilities? Just like you do with a natural disaster or a man-made disaster, you know the roles and responsibilities. Here's the difference between a natural disaster and a cyber incident. And we mean, when we talk about cyber incidents, something we all talked about up here beforehand, is we're talking about a breach. We're talking about someone getting into your system, as opposed to something we call cyber fraud, which is when someone uses the internet to commit fraud. Hey, by the way, Vinton, I met you yesterday at the panel. You seem like a great guy. Do you think you could send me a couple of $100 for my trip next week? That's cyber fraud. That is when someone uses the computer to commit fraud. What we're talking about is those cyber incidents, those technical incidents that have an impact on your operations as a state, whether it's theft of information, disruption of service, or corruption of data. So when those occur, the differences between those types of events and the things that you're used to dealing with as crises as governors is speed. They happen faster than anything you've ever dealt with before. The second thing is there will be incomplete and inaccurate information coming to you. And the reason for that is it takes a while to figure out what this technical issue is. Is it nefarious? Is it non-nefarious? Where has it occurred? What is it affecting? And you're still going to be required to make those business decisions, do those press conferences. So the more that you can prepare and practice those types of business decisions, or even simply discuss those types of business decisions before a cyber incident, is something that we're seeing becoming more and more effective when we deal with cyber risk. And the other thing is that when the two things I said was resiliency and access management, and I'll turn this over to Vint. Here's the thing about access management. You should only have access to what you should have access to. Sounds really simple. I made a joke to Vint before this panel that, you know, since he invented the internet, does he have access to everything at Google? And he said no. He has access to only that which he can gain access to, that he is allowed to have access to inside Google. How is that done? Two-factor authentication. I have some type of encryption key. I have some type of token that I can say this is me coming in from this place. That's in the States, we can't implement that across the board and give that to all of our citizens. So we need to think about how can I authenticate that you are really who you are in my state, and that you're not coming in from somewhere else, as John said, whether you're a nation-state actor or a criminal actor. So that's pretty much where we are right now. We have the governance across all states, which is a good sign. We have a confidence gap between our governors and our CISOs, and as we move forward, we're looking at the topics of resiliency. Now it's about the impact and access management. So Vint, tell us how to solve it all.
Wow. Oh, that's a tough act to follow. Mary's summary is wonderful. Does anybody have a change of underwear? Let me start out by thanking everyone for allowing me to participate today. This is a topic of real concern to a lot of us, including me. Let me start out by making a simple observation. The root of all of this problem, it's the software, stupid. That's the root of the problems. We don't know how to write software that doesn't have bugs. We've been trying for 70 years since computers have been available, and we've not succeeded in figuring out or in building tools that keep us from making stupid mistakes. Those mistakes get exploited. To make matters worse, the buggy software doesn't always get updated even when we know there's a problem. Even when we release new pieces of software, sometimes the updates don't get to where they need to be. People don't bother updating their laptops or their mobile phones and the like. So this is a very pernicious problem, and it's a very hard one to solve. So as a former academic, one of the things that I would urge is the pursuit of better tools for writing software. We want the programmers to have a software ecosystem that helps them detect when they are making bad mistakes, logic mistakes. For example, referencing a variable which has never been set, which gets you a random number, which you then do a computation on and branch off in some cyberspace where you don't belong. There are all kinds of cases like that. What I want is a piece of software that's sort of this is a metaphor, is just sitting on my shoulder here while I'm typing my code, and it says, you just did a buffer overflow. What do you mean? He says, well, look at line 27, you just screwed up. I need a piece of software that will do that for me. We don't have one of those, and it's going to take some serious research to get there. By good fortune, Governor McAuliffe, I've been a citizen of the state of Virginia since 1976, and we have some places here that can be helpful. How about the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency? How about the National Science Foundation? How about George Mason University, University of Virginia, Virginia Tech? So we have some horsepower in this state that can tackle some of those problems. And by the way, I will bet that every single governor at this table has similar stories to tell, that there are academic institutions. We should challenge them to work on that problem. Now, if I'm going to speak in general terms about how to solve this problem, there is a generic formula for dealing with this kind of situation. First nostrum. If you can find a technical solution that prevents the problem from happening, use it. The trouble, of course, is that there are not always technical solutions to these problems. So what's the next thing you do? Well, I'm going to call it post hoc enforcement. Basically, it says, if we catch you doing this stuff, there will be consequences. We're not going to catch everybody, but at the very least, we need for law enforcement and the judicial system to be able to say that confidently, that if we catch you, there will be consequences. And then there's the third mechanism. I'll call it moral suasion. It's just wrong. Tell people it's wrong. Now, that sounds wimpy, doesn't it? But I want to remind you that the weakest force in the universe is gravity. But when you have a big mass, it's powerful. When there is social agreement that certain behaviors are unacceptable, then you have a certain amount of mass that you can use. So moral suasion shouldn't be ignored as a potential solution to the problem. So those are the only three mechanisms that I can think of that will work. Now, I have one other not so wonderful piece of news, and that is that I believe, not everyone agrees with me, but I believe that there is a kind of irreducible inconvenience with good security. That we are going to have to ask people who are looking for protection to cooperate with us. The users, you and me, we have responsibilities just as much as the programmers and the companies and the institutions that use computing. We have a responsibility too. Mary already mentioned one of them. If it's available to you, two-factor authentication is really powerful stuff. In 2010, my company was attacked by what we believe was a Chinese state-level attack, and they got into some of our software. We did not like that very much. We instantly responded with several things. We encrypt all traffic across our data centers. We encrypt traffic from people's laptops to our servers. We also issued two-factor authentication tokens Nobody in the company can get into the company's resources without the second factor. And even when I'm inside the company, inside the firewall, I still have to use that two-factor authentication. And if I try to access a system for which I do not have authorization, the second factor inhibits me from getting there. So I'm a huge fan. We make that available to the public, but it has been very hard to get people to accept additional responsibility and inconvenience for exercising two-factor authentication. There's something else that some of you will have seen. Maybe you don't pay much attention to it, but sometimes when you go to a website, it'll say HTTPS. That's Hypertext Transport Protocol Secure Mode. What happens there is an encryption key gets generated that's shared by your computer or your tablet or your mobile and the serving site. And so there's an exchange which is invisible to you, but it generates a crypto variable which nobody else has, and that secures the communication. That's invisible and you don't see it. The problem with that is that it doesn't necessarily strongly authenticate you. All we know is that we have an encrypted tunnel for the communication between the two parties, but the two parties may not still know who is talking to whom. And there's another thing you can do. If you get a piece of phishing email, that's spelled with a PH, not an F, don't click on it. Now, how do you know if it's a phishing email? Well, anytime you receive something from somebody that you don't know and it has an attachment or a hyperlink and it says, click here, this is really fun, don't. If it comes from somebody that you know, but you're not sure what the conditions are, there isn't enough context in the message, this is from the CEO, this is important, it's about next year's salary, and there's an attachment or a hyperlink, don't click on it. Forward the message to the party that appears to have sent it and say, did you send this? P.S. Don't click on anything. The whole point here is to expose the fact that you're getting email that's a fake email coming from someone, and let them know that they may have been compromised, that their mail system may have been compromised. So those are just examples of things that you can do to improve the situation. Now, there's another thing which has been pointed out several times, and that is that the attacker and the victim could be in quite different jurisdictions. It could be across state boundaries, it could be across national boundaries, which means this is everybody's problem. It's not confined to where the attacker is or confined to where the victim is, which means we have to have agreements about what to do when we discover that there is an attacker out of our jurisdiction. We need international agreements, and we need national level federal agreements, interstate agreements, so we can cooperate with each other. And I don't know how to overemphasize that, because in the absence of that cooperation, this is going to be really hard. And so we may need extradition kinds of rules and also information sharing. Well, Adam, I have a long list of questions and answers, but I have the feeling that the better thing to do would be to let other people ask the questions. So I'm going to stop there and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Vinton, Mary. I've also been asked by the governors to just spend a minute to explain what the University of Southern California's initiative is about. First, it's multidisciplinary. It's not just engineering. It certainly includes engineering, but this problem is far broader. So it includes the USC School of Communications, which I run Washington research programs. It includes USC School of Public Policy, leading research into cyber policy implications and recommendations. And last but not least, the School of Business, which is bringing in corporate partners and introducing return on investment and other valuation metrics in cybersecurity. Other schools, law, medicine, and even social work are also involved. Our premise is that things are going wrong. We all know that. Our focus is what happens next, what happens in the field of emergency response and recovery after things have gone wrong, whether on a large scale or on a small scale. As we move in relatively few years from a world in which we have an order of magnitude of maybe 10 billion devices connected to the internet to one that has more than 100 billion devices connected to the internet, things are going to go wrong in very unexpected and very startling ways. If a hurricane comes, you know there will be high winds and floods. But when the Internet of Things fails, you have no idea what's going to happen, and that's if you know what's happened. So how to prepare for emergency response and recovery in such a field of uncertainty? First responders. In an emergency, most people dial 911. Okay, the police arrive, then what do? In Los Angeles and New York, there are very large police departments that have experts in these areas, but in thousands of medium and small jurisdictions around the United States, there are no experts. So we're working to help design resources and programs for the 99% of police departments, firefighters, and other first responders who are not experts. And in fact, understand that you are starting a cybersecurity center of excellence. Maybe that's a model which can be spread to other states. But every home and business in America is not only at risk of being attacked, every home and business in America is also at risk of being an unwitting enabler of cyber attacks. At our USC Fall Roundtable planning our initiative, Cerf said he'd sold a joke for years that he never wanted to pick up a newspaper and read the headline, "Bank of America taken down by 100,000 refrigerators." He can't tell that joke anymore because people are doing it, except now they're using baby monitors and other household devices. And webcams. Vince said we need people in millions of homes around America who know how to respond and recover. And as he pointed out, in the home, it's the kids who almost certainly have more knowledge than the adults. So at Vince's suggestion, we are working on cybersecurity merit badges for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Yeah. People laughed when he first suggested it, then they stopped laughing. Thank you. But Chairman McAuliffe, last night you said you were taking Vince's suggestion to the next level to achieve universal cybersecurity education in Virginia. Perhaps you can share more on that in just a second. This is why USC wants to partner with you, governors, with all of you, because yes, we partner with federal agencies and with private industry, and they are truly valued partners. But in the 50 states and territories, you run the laboratories of democracy, and it will be at the state and local level where you'll be testing and experimenting with response and recovery as you always do, and it will be at the state and local level where best practices will emerge that can be identified and replicated. So my colleagues and I thank you for this invitation, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. Let's give our panel a great round of applause if we could. I'd like to have a couple brief comments, if I could, from the 28th Chief, the head of the National Guard, who is with us here today, General Angel. I want to thank him. But I noticed we have a lot of tags here in the office, the head of our National Guards all over the United States of America. If they could all stand, and let's give our tags a great round of applause. I think I speak for every governor. We could not do our jobs were it not for our National Guard, and I just want to thank all the tags and all the Guard folks for what you do to help us be successful. General?
Thank you, Governor, and we love that you love the Guard, and that is good for us. So if I could just say that, this domain, the cyber domain, is obviously taking up a lot of bandwidth, and I want to thank, is that the right word to use? Bandwidth. I would say that, thank you for starting and this emphasis on cybersecurity, and that with the council yesterday with Secretary Kelly is a huge thing. I think it is our role as National Guard members is we fight wars and we protect the homeland and we build partnerships. Those are the three fundamental things we do. And in the cyber world, there is really no difference in whether it's flying airplanes or fighting in the cyber domain. What we're seeing in the Pentagon and around the world is those four countries you mentioned, the Russia, the China, the Iran, and North Korea, they don't want to fight us in a military sense. They want to fight us in this gray zone, this area where they don't have to fight our tanks and our soldiers. They want to keep doing these kinds of things and compete with us in this area that's kind of in between war. And so we're going to see more of that. And you governors in the 50 states, territories, and the District of Columbia all have some cyber capability that's in the military. And some of those 36,000 jobs, Governor McAuliffe, will be filled by men and women who have been trained in the military that Admiral Rogers and the services simply cannot pay enough to stay and do that. And it's my hope and the Adjutant General's hope that we can find a way to partner and let those individual cyber warriors and experts continue to serve and use their expertise across the way. But one point I want to make, and I talked to Admiral Rogers about that this just yesterday, is I think it's important that we we have so many people that are sort of responsible for these things that we have to think about this as a country through DHS and through Cyber Command and the military piece and through all of your state cyber security apparatuses to figure out so that, as Mary said down the road, that when the event happens, we exactly know how it is that we are going to respond. And frankly, the military folks that you have in your National Guard are really the only folks that under your authorities can work off the Department of Defense network and help respond in some of these cases. So this is a huge benefit for the National Guard and for all your states, territories, and the district. And we want to partner with you and be part of the solution, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, General. I appreciate that. And listen, all the states and some of the things we've led on Virginia, you've got to start our children early. You've got to start doing this K through 12. We've redesigned all our high schools in Virginia. We now have computer science code writing in our core curriculum courses now. We offer for free cyber ranges in the summer for high school students to come to one of our camps and spend time learning how to be a cyber warrior. We will pay for, especially for our veterans, if you're willing to come in, commit back, we will give you a scholarship. We will pay for you to get your cyber degree so that you will come and work for the state. So we have a lot of innovative. We have 14 centers of excellence now. I will tell every governor, I think you need to ask every one of your community college presidents, are you working toward becoming a center of excellence on cyber? Because if you're not going to get those cyber warriors. You're not going to have the training. And I would ask every one of your institutions of higher education, 4-year and 2-year, hopefully they're leaning in on that. We only got a couple of minutes left. I don't know if anybody has a question. There's John Hickenlooper, great state of Colorado.
So, and I would let you choose how to manage this. One of the things we've been working on setting up this National Cybersecurity Center down in Colorado Springs is the vacuum in terms of educational capacity to not just, I mean, we governors are on a steep curve, we recognize that, but mayors, county commissioners, I mean, elected officials all over the country, not that they need to learn how to write code, but that they can allocate resources and have priorities. And then you cobble in with that. I mean, again, the large companies mostly have at least a board member, if not a senior executive, who's a cyber expert. But the smaller companies, and by small companies I mean up to $50 million, even larger than that, don't have that capacity. And so what's your analysis of how we can most efficiently and the lowest cost affect that void of education and knowledge?
It's Vinton again. I can't look at you and talk into the microphone at the same time. This is very annoying.
It'll pick up. You don't have to be close to it. You can just speak close to it. And watch this. You can stand over here, and it still projects.
All right. Oh, that works. Thank you very much. I feel much better about it. I hate these conversations where you're looking in the other direction. So here are a couple of observations. In addition to having a well-educated cyber workforce, it occurs to me that we ought to have a cyber fire department. I want you to think about this for a minute. Imagine your house is on fire and you're standing in front of the house with a garden hose and you realize, I need somebody with a bigger hose and more water. So what do? You don't call the police department, you call the fire department, and they come out with a big hose. Now think about what they do. I want you to be careful because this is a metaphor that has some brokenness in it, and I'll get to that momentarily. The fire department comes out, and they break the roof in, they pour water in, they do all kinds of damage, but they put the fire out, and we let them do that because we know that if the fire isn't put out, the rest of the neighborhood's in danger, okay? So we accept the damage that might be done. Now, here's where the analogy starts to get a little weak. Let's imagine that Adam is running company A, and Mary is running company B. And there exists a cyber fire department. That's you, Governor. And so Adam would never do this, of course, but he notices that he could call the cyber fire department and tell them that Mary's company is on cyber fire. And so you come roaring out, with all horns blazing, and disrupt her business for the next 3 days while Adam is making all kinds of money. It's clear that that isn't quite right, and so we'll probably have to have a rule that says if you want to call the cyber fire department, it should be Mary that calls the fire department and not Adam. So as I say, the analogy may not be very good. But we really need to invest in people who are skilled in the art of response and also attribution. And here I want to raise all kinds of red flags. It's easy in this space to pretend to be somebody else. The last thing in the world you want to do is to generate a cyber response or a response to a cyber attack against the wrong party. This could be really bad news, especially in an international setting. So think about the people that we train and pay to be part of our first responder teams. Maybe we need a cyber fire department too. And so that's one thought that comes to mind.
And Governor, to add to what Vint just said, when we're looking at educating, small to medium, whether it's businesses or agencies within governments, without a doubt, what we're doing right now in the United States and what we should be suggesting is we need to look at the NIST framework. So to all of us and to the governors, we get it, right? The NIST framework. But truly, when companies say, small to medium-sized companies, to whether when I was in the FBI or Deloitte, where do I start? That's why the NIST framework was written. It's 42 pages long. Anyone can read that, whether they're a mayor, a town official. And the thing about the NIST framework is you can self-assess. It is not the be-all and end-all. It is not a robust cyber assessment, as Governor McAuliffe said he just did in Virginia. But if people were to understand just that, we start with the NIST framework. I think then that what they can do as executives, and what we say is ask intelligent questions. 85% of the issues that happen on the internet are about cyber hygiene. They are about changing our passwords, doing patches, as Vint talked about. We have state universities in the United States that a student comes in and, as a freshman and gets an email account, and they never change their password for 4 years. Those kinds of things, I agree with you. You don't need to be a technical expert. You don't need to know a lot about this topic. But if we take the NIST framework and we were to say password discipline, patch management. Now, when you go back to your technical folks and you talk about patch management, they're going to roll their eyes. But what patch management is the vulnerabilities in the software that Vint was talking about. We're patching them. So if your front door was not locked and you knew that, you would lock it. So that, I think, would be some place that we could start and then bring everybody to the same level of understanding with cybersecurity.
Thank you, Mary. Those are very good prescriptions. I just wanted to add one or two other points about this. There we are. Okay, so the first one has to do with better measurement of security implementation. I used to be the chairman of the visiting committee on advanced technology at NIST, and I still report to Chuck Ramin, who runs the information technology lab at NIST, which has the cybersecurity group in it. And so I'm still engaged. The one thing which is missing from our toolkit is our ability to measure how well you implemented that framework. And because, as Mary points out, it's a relatively general document, sometimes you could implement what it says and still not be secure, or you can implement what it says and don't interwork with everything else. So there's still work to be done, but even getting started is important. There's one other thing. I'm going to scare some people with this. I am so proud of Google because of what we do with regard to backup and resilience. Once a year, for an entire week, we do a disaster response exercise. In that exercise, we shut off the primary systems and run on the backup. We're serious about backup. This is not a desktop exercise. This is live operations with the backup systems. And you have to be pretty damn brave and pretty confident to do that. And we make ourselves do that because that's the real test. When things go south, and they will, if your backup systems can't be trusted to run because you never really depended on them, then you don't have much. So I lay that at the feet of the people who are responsible for designing and building these systems to show you, governors, that you have real, resilient backup.
Let me move to Governor Meade for the last question. I remind everybody, this is between the 55 tags and their cocktail hour. So you determine how long you want to answer this. We're having a party, the USAA, in honor of all of our tags, so I just lay that out there.
Thank you for the nice setup, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Two quick questions. One is you talked about the unavoidable inconvenience, and I've walked around state offices and I'll see the computer monitor and below it the password because people, it's so many characters I can't remember it. I have to write it down. So the first question, then I'll ask the second one quickly, is what about biometrics or retinal scans? Is technology going to catch up with this? So that's question one. Then question two, General, for you, are you comfortable that we have a system in place? Because we've seen a couple incidents where state one was attacked in such and such a way, and then you learn the next day state two's attacked, day three, state three. Are we sharing information with one another from the military, from law enforcement, John, to prevent, we'd hate to see 50 states in 50 days get attacked in the same way. So Vinton, maybe first question on technology, is there good news on the way?
So there are indeed examples of biometrics. Some of you may have already signed up for a system called Clear. Even if you're a TSA subscriber, you can cut into the front of the TSA line if you have a Clear account, and they use two fingers fingerprints to identify you, and if your picture pops up on the screen, you're in. Now, this sounds pretty good, except for one problem. If somebody is able to penetrate the system and get the digital summary of your fingerprints and then inject that information at the right place in the system, they become you. It's one thing to change your password. It's something else to change your fingerprints. That's harder, or your eye scan. So I favor a mixture of biometric and something else. The two-factor authentication would be absolutely cool for me. 2 fingerprints and a token that generates a one-time crypto variable, for example. That's actually pretty powerful.
And I'm going to talk fast because I don't want to be between these tags and their beer. But honestly, sir, it's a great point. And to be honest with you, no, I'm not. I am not confident that there's a good system that relays every cyber incident in every state with every other state. There probably should be, and I'll look into it and see what we do from the National Guard piece. Admiral Rogers may have a better answer for that for you tomorrow when he sees you, but I can't tell you that we do.
I agree that it's not fast enough or on scale right now. And what will happen sometimes is the technical indicators will get shared. So that'll be the bits and bytes of an intrusion. But what won't get shared and won't get discussed will be how they got into your system and what they were looking for inside the system. So it might be very valuable to hear in Wyoming that someone next door, someone's targeting their health system and they're doing it for ransomware. And that type of color is not getting shared at scale right now.
Let's give our panel a great round of applause. We're looking forward to getting all 50 states up to where we need to be. And I thank everybody for being with us today. And tags, let's go.